Alrighty, we got to talk about this because Canadian politics is getting absolutely greasy. There are several things happening simultaneously, and it's kind of a race to see which one is going to happen first. And whichever direction it goes in, it's going to have drastic impacts on just our culture and kind of our democracy. And it's going to be making history no matter how you look at it. So on one hand, you have Justin Trudeau proroguing the government, basically shutting it down until potentially the new year. And this is, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next couple of days, today or tomorrow. But Freeland has already debunked that, saying, no, we're not going to be proroguing the government. So is she telling the truth? Is she lying? I don't really know. No one really knows until we go through the motions. On the other hand, you have the Bloc Québécois, that they have been trying to get more money for seniors. And the Liberals have been denying that, saying, no, we're not going to give you more money for seniors. Now, the interesting thing about this is that more money that they're trying to give would push seniors over a certain income threshold, which would make them no longer eligible for dental care. So this is where it's all extremely confusing. So why would the Liberals be voting against more money for dental care? Because they don't want to push seniors above that income threshold, or pushing several seniors above that income threshold to the point where they would no longer qualify for free or even subsidized dental care. And this is where it gets kind of greasy. The Liberals have launched a coordinated attack saying, we are doing a lot for dental care and we're going to prove it to you. You don't have to take my word on it. You can watch the next 7 to 10 MPs say the exact same thing with the exact same music, with the exact same scripts, insert amount of people in our riding that we've helped. You ready for this? Here we go. Let's take a look.
7,355.
6,249 people.
3,558.
7,329.
4,200.
So what the hell is going on? Why is everybody arguing on this dental and pharmacare? We're going to be taking a look at that in this video, along with kind of much more. It's got a lot of Liberal MPs spoke to the press yesterday about all of this ongoing craziness that's happening in the House, out of the House. Jews and Canadians are being told to die and they're under attack here in Canada. It's extremely stressful. Take it from somebody who has one gray hair somewhere on my beard here, and I think I've got some gray hairs in my hair. And yes, I am absolutely freaking out because of that. Add that to the stress of Canadian politics. Boy, oh boy, is it getting intense. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get into it. So for those that have missed it, here's the projection on the polls. Conservatives at 228 projected seats, Trudeau at 53, Bloc at 42, and Jagmeet at, hold on a second here, folks. My eyes aren't that good. Little numbers for a little man. 18 projected seats. And, some people think, are you just doing that to be condescending? The answer is no, of course, I would never do that to Jagmeet. 99% likely across the board for odds of winning the most seats and odds of a majority government. So things are looking good there. And they're actually looking good in other places, such as you have conservation officers that are busting lots of people in Ontario for salmon poaching. It's about time this happens in Canada. Go, conservation officer on the scene. You've seen lots of people. They are just in the rivers, in the lakes, fishing without licenses. They're poaching. They're doing a whole bunch of naughty things. And it's good. Like I grew up with the impression that you don't mess around when it comes to that stuff. They'll take your car, they'll take your house, they'll take everything that you've got. And some people, usually people that are not necessarily from here or maybe don't respect the laws. No, I'm just going to come out and say it. People that just aren't really from here don't respect our laws, our way of life, our culture, our rules. And that's what we're seeing. So good on the conservation officers for actually cracking down on that stuff. And now Justin Trudeau, he's not even in Canada. Well, he actually returns soon, but yesterday he wasn't in Canada. He was his plane arrived in Laos, and this is him and his son getting off the plane for a family trip. Nobody there. So what's going on is that Justin Trudeau knows his time is up. He knows that he has a very small window right now to still be able to use Prime Minister resources. So he's getting all his vacations in. And while he's off on vacation, he came out with not only that coordinated Liberal attack from all those Liberal MPs saying, look, we're helping old age people or just people in general with dental care. We are doing a lot for you people. So please vote us back in. But he came out with his own video as well, his attack ad on Pierre Poilievre.
Here's something we can all agree on. We need more housing in Canada. But that the government should step up and make sure that housing gets built, that's where some people disagree. Take federal lands, land that's owned by the federal government that isn't being used anymore. The Conservative Party leader wants to sell it all off to make a quick buck. That does nothing for you. The federal government owns tons of land in cities and towns across the country. You could build a lot of homes on those lands, so that's what we're going to do. We're offering up that public land for housing. And we're not just going to sell it all to developers, we're going to long-term lease it. See, by leasing the land, we get to work with communities to make sure that home builders are building the right homes, homes you can afford. We've got land, we got lots of houses to build, so that's exactly what we're going to do.
Okay, so he took Pierre Poilievre's idea and he rebranded it as in, instead of selling you land, we're going to lease it to you so that your house is never really yours. You'll never own that land. And if you bought it with, 10 years or 5 years left on the lease, the government can come and take that back whenever they want because it's leased. Now, yes, you can renew those 99-year government leases, but still, that's a tricky situation that not a lot of people, the majority, like 99% of people, don't like to be in. Not as their primary residence, at least. Cottages are, kind of a bit of an exception, but nonetheless, that's just super disingenuous for Justin Trudeau to pretend like using all this government land to sell, or in his case, his rebranded pitch lease was his idea. I don't know. Take your pick. Would you rather the government sell you land, you can own it as vacant land, and then build a freehold house on there? Or would you rather the government issue 99-year leases for your land? Let me know down in the comments, I suppose. And then you have Garnet Genius here, who is rushing to social media late last night saying, breaking, Liberals are filibustering the Public Account Committee to protect former Liberal minister from questions about the Green Slush Fund scandal. Let's take a look.
Hi, folks. I'm right outside the door of the room in Parliament where the Public Accounts Committee is meeting, and the Liberals are filibustering a Conservative motion about their Green Slush Fund scandal. Former Liberal Minister Navdeep Bains was before the Public Accounts Committee today to answer important questions about the Liberals' Green Slush Fund scandal. He did not answer. He was avoiding questions, not answering, and that's why Conservatives moved a privilege motion. That is a motion reporting to the House that this former Liberal minister has failed to answer important questions about this Liberal Green Slush Fund scandal. Now, right now, the Liberals are actually filibustering this motion. This motion has the support of all opposition parties, and if passed, it will go to Parliament in a way that would order Navdeep Bains to actually provide answers to questions. So Liberals are filibustering it to avoid accountability. They've stopped Parliament from working because they don't want to hand over documents related to the Green Slush Fund scandal. And now they're filibustering the Public Accounts Committee in order to prevent us from requiring former Liberal Minister Navdeep Bains to answer questions. This is what Parliament's coming to. They're filibustering in one committee while they're blocking documents in the House of Commons because Liberals are desperate to avoid any kind of accountability for their green slush fund scandal.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely correct. And that's kind of also what's happening behind the scene of all of this, the dental care, the pharmacare, what's all those votes and the freezing, the temporary freezing of government so they can't really discuss any or debate any motions that are put forward. And then also this potential proroguing process that's going on. A lot of it is just smoke and mirrors and greasy politics. And now we have to take a look at the different responses from the conservative side and the liberal side in terms of what's going on with, not only in the Middle East with, Israel and, the terrorist regimes of Tehran as well as Hamas, but also how that's affected us here in Canada, where on October 7th in Vancouver, you had literally a terrorist entity or terrorist linked to Hamas group that was saying death to Canada, death to Israel, and death to America. So let's take a look at the different responses from both parties. So Pierre Poilievre came out really, really strong, saying we basically support Israel with just completely bombing Iran.
Yesterday you said that you endorsed Israel proactively defending itself by hitting Iran's nuclear sites, which is something that President Joe Biden does not endorse. Do you not feel like this could lead to a likelihood of an all-out conventional war between Iran and Israel? And do you not agree with Joe Biden and his assessment?
I think the idea of allowing a genocidal, theocratic, unstable dictatorship that is desperate to avoid being overthrown by its own people to develop nuclear weapons is about the most dangerous and irresponsible thing that the world could ever allow. And if Israel were to stop that genocidal, theocratic, unstable government from acquiring nuclear weapons, it would be a gift by the Jewish state to humanity.
That's a pretty freaking bold statement. And to be honest, there's a mixed reaction to that. A lot of people are going, whoa, man, that's a big step from axe to carbon tax to bomb and destroy Iran and all their nuclear facilities. And I just kind of love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. It's very rare that you're going to find somebody that you 100% agree with. But aside from what's happening in the Middle East, let's take a look at what Melissa Lantsman just recently said in the House of Commons with, standing up to anti-Semitism here in Canada. And this was actually shared not by a Canadian channel on X. This is Vizgrad, and that's like a huge 1-point-something million subscribed channel, huge account on X that has been sharing a lot of clips about what's happening with the war in Israel.
A year ago, the Jewish people were savagely attacked in the deadliest act of sadistic barbarism since the Holocaust. Over 1,200 souls were raped, murdered, and taken hostage by a radical death cult backed by the clerical regime in Tehran, 7 Canadians among them. 101 remain in the grips of terrorists, hidden in the tunnels of hell. 1 year ago, the glory of living a peaceful and safe existence in this country as a Jew ended. They have placated the mob of woke radicals and the anti-Zionist Jew haters that reign free in our streets and reward terror. We used to be a country that was clear and unequivocal about eradicating anti-Semitism here and destroying terrorists without conditions everywhere. For those who remain captive, those waiting for their loved ones to come home, for those who never made it back, we remember you. And for those horrified at the state of our country, we will fight to restore the Canada you know and love, even when they won't.
So that was a very, very bold statement. A lot of people really support Melissa Lantsman for speaking up about what's going on in Canada. And then you also have this clip here that I shared in a yesterday video and also on X of the police really starting to enforce the law with, riot gear and stuff like that on these pro-Palestine protesters. And I just stick with me. If you've seen it, don't worry. Just skip a couple minutes ahead.
Fuck you! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
So that is kind of an interesting development. A lot of people have been wanting this to happen, you know, over the past 1 year of these ongoing kind of radical extremist protests, but it's finally happening now. And I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And in a new development, you actually have the Senate is discussing this. Specifically, the video that circulated, which I shared in a previous video, where the radical group in Vancouver was calling for, you know, the death of Canadians, Jews, and Israel or America. Let's take a look at what the Senate has to say.
Senator Husakos.
Senator Gold, it's been a full year now that we've seen pro-Hamas rallies organized by Samadoun across this country and in our streets, rallies that include chants calling for the eradication of Israel from the river to the sea, and even far worse than that, we've seen rallies where they're calling death to the Jewish people, death to Israel, even death to Canada. And all along this period of time, your government has not had the intestinal fortitude or the political leadership to condemn and call this out. Right across Canada, we've seen attacks, even as Jewish schools are being shot at and others are being evacuated after they receive threats. And Jewish senior homes have been targeted right here in Ottawa with angry mobs shouting these awful things. So, Senator Gold, I've given up on the Liberal government, but you as government representative and as Senator Gold, will you get up in this chamber and condemn these hatred exercises being conducted in our streets?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question and for underlining, indeed, the hateful expressions that plague our streets. As the minister said, it's obviously unacceptable. It's absolutely it's obvious, but it's absolutely unacceptable to burn the Canadian flag and to chant death to Canada. It's also unacceptable to deny and celebrate the events of October 7th and to champion the acts of a terrorist group. And that is the position of the government, and I support that 100%. As a member of the Jewish community who lives next door to the consulate of Israel, I am altogether too aware of what's happening on our streets and the intimidation that it takes place, and the government has been consistent in condemning that and will continue to do so.
Senator Husakos.
Senator Gold, for years we've been calling on your government to get the IRGC listed as a terrorist group. It's been for years now we've been calling that your government lists Samadoun as a terrorist organization. Your minister refuses to do that and refuses to condemn Samadoun. The same Minister of Foreign Affairs who was photographed smiling and holding hands with raging Jew hater Mohammed Abbas. She has banned Canadian exports of defensive weapons to Israel. And now she doesn't have the courage to list Samadoun as a terrorist organization and condemn it for all the hatred they've been spewing in our streets.
Senator Gold.
You know, I thought perhaps that this chamber would escape some of the behavior that has been exhibited in the other place and by your leader on solemn occasions like Thursday night, turning an important event into a partisan attack. We don't have rules in this Senate similar to those in the House of Commons. The decision to list the Samadoun is under review. It's a fact. It's a product and be a function of the advice of our security intelligence services, who are continuously educating this. And once again, I would appeal to your sense of your best sense, if you can muster it,
Senator Gold.
Such a partisan.
Okay, so it's a lot of talking words, a lot of yada, yada, yada from these people. Whoa, that's going to get me canceled like Don Cherry, and no actual action. And speaking of just blah, 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 here's Mélanie Joly, who was met in Parliament after sessions were concluded yesterday, and what she had to say here about Canada is one of the 7 most influential countries in the world. Spoiler alert, no, we are not, unfortunately. We are not.
He has comments yesterday. He said he doubled down on his comments that he would support Israel proactively striking Iran's nuclear sites. Does that concern you about an escalation, or is that something that Canada would support as well?
First and foremost, the position of Canada has always been to bring back peace and stability to the Middle East. Israel has said that they would retaliate and that they would do so, and consequences would be severe. What the G7 has said, all countries of the G7, is that that answer needed to be proportionate. And that's what we'll continue to advocate for. And we stand along the 7 most influential and impactful countries in the world.
And so specifically targeting those nuclear sites, would that be proportionate?
My point is it needs to be proportionate, and the President of the United States has already said that he's against it.
So there you go. We aren't critical thinkers. We don't have our own thoughts. It's whatever Sleepy Joe Biden says, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And that's not me saying we should do it or we shouldn't do it. That's just me referring to a quote that we just heard Melanie Joly say. Joe Biden said it, and so there you go. That's it. The top 7 most influential countries in the world do not rely solely on what the President of the United States says as the golden standard of what to do and what not to do. I'm sorry, but that doesn't make you an influential anything. That makes you a follower of a very influential, arguably one of the most, if not the most influential and or powerful countries in the world. But hey, that's just me and my opinion, and I'd love to know yours. Then you got Melanie Joly that talks about how many Canadians are in Lebanon, which is why we are sending $45 million, not 45, crying out loud, might as well be $25 million to Lebanon for humanitarian aid.
Of Lebanon, 122 Canadians are leaving Lebanon today on a new flight, and we're also assisting the departure of 15 UK citizens. Tomorrow there will be 100 new seats on a flight between, again, Beirut and Istanbul, and there will be more to come. At this point, we're at 1,200 Canadians that have been assisted in departing Lebanon. And of course, my message is always the same. The situation is extremely volatile, extremely dangerous. Please, if you're offered a seat, take it. What we're seeing is there's around 100 people contacting us now per day to get more information about assisted departures. Everybody should have been contacted. So please make sure to go on the website of Global Affairs Canada.
Okay, so I've said this before in a recent video, and I'm going to say it again. Melanie Joly is like an action figure, and not in a good way. It's not meant to be a compliment at all. Look at how she's talking. There's obviously the camera that we're seeing, CPAC, right, is pointing to her, but the reporters are the ones asking her questions, and she's trying to make eye contact with them. It's like when you're in school and you go up for your first ever, speech or presentation, and you've got your notes there, and you look down, you look down, you look up, you look down, you look down, you look up, you look down, 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 and then this thing happened, and then you look up, hey everybody, and then you look down, right, and it's like, no, you should be looking up. In this case, she should not be looking at the camera. She should be looking at the reporters until that last question or that last statement where she addresses all of the people that are still in Lebanon. You should be leaving. You should be getting on those seats. You should be getting out of there, right? And just her hand motions and all this stuff and her attire as if she's like a World War II nurse or something like that. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's so over dramatic. And that's why I call her like a freaking action figure, because it's something just that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking into it too much, but she is just, she's too over exaggerating, and she doesn't look at the bright spots that she's supposed to look, which tells me bad acting. She's not made for politics. She should be in theater with Justin Trudeau somewhere freaking not even Hollywood, in Las Vegas or something, on the side of the streets. Like, it doesn't make any sense that these people are in power, man. Like, even Chrystia Freeland, she has no finance background, yet she's handling billions of dollars of Canadian money. Like, it's the biggest joke. It's the biggest joke ever. And speaking of biggest joke, perfect segue into our next person here who is addressing reporters, Sean Fraser. Let's take a look at this guy who lost 1 million people once upon a time.
What I see with the Conservative plan is a handful of ideas that look, frankly, like they've been pulled off Google after a 5-minute piece of research, thrown at the wall to see what sticks, rather than concrete solutions to very real problems that the Canadian housing sector
GST bill, if the Conservatives are so obstructionist, and they're slowing down everything in the House, why are you even doing this omnibus bill that's going to contain all these measures? Why not just a standalone GST bill that seems to have broad support in the House?
Well, look, what we've seen, over the past couple of years is that the Conservatives don't like to admit publicly that they're against something that is popular, right? We saw that with childcare. We saw that with dental care. Mr. Poilievre still doesn't want to say what he would do should he become Prime Minister on dental care, because his position will be highly unpopular with Canadians. And so, this is something that we're going to move forward with. We know we need to do it urgently. It's one of the reasons why the Prime Minister made the announcement last week. It's one of the reasons why Minister Champagne is meeting with the grocery CEOs today to really put that pressure on them, because we know that this is something that is important for Canadians. And if I can take a minute just on grocery prices, we've seen inflation come down significantly over the past year.
All right, so they are taking the NDP talking points, and now you've got the Liberals going after grocery store CEOs. Like, none of this makes sense. They're all taking talking points from one another and pretending as if other parties haven't said it. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And now let's take a look at another Liberal who's extremely ridiculous, who just got out of the no-no can, right? He got banned as well from speaking in the House. We don't care about it though, because he's a Liberal, likely deserved it. I can say that. I'm not mainstream media. I of course have a bias. I'm not a freaking journalist or a reporter. I'm just a guy making YouTube videos. I can make those claims if I would like to. So he calls on Pierre Poilievre to be suspended for 6 months. That's crazy.
Do you still have confidence in Mr. Fergus as Speaker, considering what you're saying, a double standard is in place?
What I think is that, like, we have to remember a few things. One is that the ruling against me actually wasn't made by Speaker Fergus. It was made by Chris D'Entremont, who's the Deputy Speaker and a Conservative. And it was done, and he told me so after that debate on March 20th, that it was done because he felt pressure from Conservative MPs. So effectively, I was silenced because Conservative MPs didn't agree or didn't like what I had to say.
Good, you're a dumbass.
Remember that. So when you asked the question about Speaker Fergus, I would say that I think it's not just on Speaker Fergus. I think it's on Speaker Fergus. I think it's on Chris D'Entremont. But I think it's also on Pierre Poilievre. The leaders of parties need to show leadership. With responsibility, with leadership comes responsibility. And Pierre Poilievre is not doing that. As I was saying a moment ago, Mr. Poilievre is consistently breaking the rules of the House, consistently calling MPs names, consistently tying them to dictatorships or terrorist organizations or others. And in most of those cases, he faces no punishment at all. In those rare cases like this one, where he faces a punishment, then he gets 1 day, and I'm silenced for 6 months. And I will tell you that I believe that if I hadn't been punished, and if I hadn't held out, because I refused to retract what I said 6 months ago and apologize, then I suspect that Mr. Poilievre would have faced very little punishment, if any at all, for what he said the other day. So I do think...
But the end of Mr. Fergus is still the Speaker, and he was the person who rescinded your punishment yesterday. He could have did it 5 months ago, 6 months ago. Is that still not on him to have allowed you not to speak for this period of time?
I think that's correct. But I think it was on Chris D'Entremont to rescind his ruling. It was his ruling. It's his to rescind.
What do you think needs to happen then? Specifically to Pierre Poilievre, should he be kicked out of the House for 7 months like you? I mean, what do you want to see happen?
What I wanted to see was that the punishment for Pierre Poilievre was at least as harsh as mine. In other words, the punishment that...
Dude, you're a nobody. You say whack job things. The thing that he got suspended for 6 months was essentially accusing Putin right-wing propaganda infiltrating the Conservative Party. That's an absurd claim. Like, he's wearing a Ukraine pin. The Conservatives have been more critical and demanded that the government of Canada send more money, more resources. It's not something I agree with, to Ukraine to fight the good fight, right, against Russia. And for him to say that that the Conservative Party has been infiltrated by Russian propaganda, that's direct contradiction to things that the Conservatives have literally accused the Liberal Party of not doing enough. not sending enough tanks, enough ammo, all of that stuff that I don't personally agree with, and likely a lot of you viewers don't agree with. So they're in direct contradiction. He's in direct contradiction of his own statements. It's a joke. It's absolutely ridiculous. And hell, he should have been banned for a year. Nobody cares about him. Nobody cares. He's not even a real politician. He's a backbencher, mid-level at best. But I'd love to know your thoughts on that. And then you've got, speaking of backbencher here, right? This guy who's totally excited for the chance of one day potentially, hypothetically, being in the Prime Minister's shoes.
Well, because the RCMP commissioner has spoken. The RCMP commissioner and the Auditor General have been very, very clear to say, do not proceed this way. There are procedures existing. There are ways to do that would preserve the rights and the rights of the people which you're talking about. Imagine what he's suggesting is that you would turn over personal files of people, of employees and former employees of a third-party entity. This is pretty wide. You're saying that now Parliament would say to an arm's-length entity, a foundation created by Parliament in 2001, not respecting any of the rules about procedural fairness, not respecting what the Auditor General is saying. There is a fundamental problem. That's why we're standing up for democracy. We're standing up for justice. We're standing up for common sense, I would say.
It's dangerous. Use the word dangerous.
Well, because if you're doing that today, imagine what he could do to you or to any other organization, because we have laws in this country to protect personal freedom. You have laws in this country to protect personal information. You have rules and processes. Listen, the RCMP has processes to get documents. The Auditor General has processes to do that. And what he's saying, and they're both saying that, it's dangerous. And that's why what he's asking, that's why the rule that the Speaker made is fundamental. He said, let's study that in committee. So we will, at one time...
The Liberals put it in a committee that the Liberals don't chair, don't have a majority.
Well, listen, there's already a committee of the House to do that, because if you allow that...
But you struck a
no, but hold on. If you allow that, you're creating a precedent. And the question is not today. The question is, what about in the future? What if he goes after you after? What if he goes after your organization after? What if he goes to any other third-party organization? What about if it's your personal file? What about if it's your file that he wants? Does that mean that Parliament is sovereign that can ask, that they would have your file? And files of employees of your organization that have left? You're talking about an organization that no longer exists. You're talking about an organization where the chair has resigned, where the board has resigned. You're talking about an organization for which you have 4 independent reports. We got to the bottom.
Okay, so there's a couple different outlooks at this, right? As to why Justin Trudeau is not forking over the documents to the RCMP. One, the most obvious is that it would be incriminating, and either himself or people close to him would have to be held accountable for committing crimes. In Parliament, they have not only just parliamentary privilege with words that they can say to each other and accusations that they can make, which would otherwise be likely slanderous in certain instances for regular civilians, but they also get a lot of other protections, immunity, and there might be written codes or rules around that specifically, display what that is and what those parameters are. But as we've seen with the corruption, with the slush fund, with the Arrive scam, all of these things that Justin Trudeau has manipulated the system for his own personal best interest, for crying out loud. We've never had a prime minister whose net worth is skyrocketed to $100 million. Doesn't make any freaking sense, man. Are you kidding me? That's some Wall Street level income. Come on, man. So this guy is obviously using his position to get himself rich. We could just get that out of the way. Now, is it a bulletproof case for him? Is Justin Trudeau solidly protected to the point where it doesn't matter how many investigations there are, even if he got completely hands off, would he be held criminally accountable? You got a lot of people, including myself, that think yes, he would be. It seems like, based off the Conservatives are saying, there is undeniable evidence that would prove otherwise, including whistleblower testimonies and so on. On the other hand, Jagmeet Singh also just yesterday came out and said, look, Trudeau, you need to drop the act, give them the documents so we can move on and get out of this freeze. So, you know, when they stand up in Parliament and Justin Trudeau says something and Pierre says, I demand you withdraw and apologize. And the House Speaker says, what are you going to do? And Trudeau says, no, I'm not going to do that. Or even vice versa. When Pierre says something and Trudeau says, I'm going to get you to apologize right now. And Pierre says, nah, out of luck. Don't hold your breath. That theory of I'm going to get you to do this thing and I'm going to make it and add all the social pressure so that you feel forced or people think that you're forced to give me that thing that I want. In the event of a debate, it would be an apology, or in this instance, it would be documents to the RCMP. There could be the other avenue of Justin Trudeau is protected. He just doesn't want to go through with showing those documents to the RCMP because it would give everybody the assumption that Pierre Poilievre can control Justin Trudeau and make him do whatever he wants. So there's a bit of an ego battle and potentially a litigious battle, or what could be litigious, at stake here. And until there's a new development, until there's a ruling, until there's documents that are forced to be shown, we just aren't really going to know. And then there's also the potential of government proroguing. And that is under immense amount of speculation as well. But like I said at the beginning of the video, if it is going to happen, which it's already been stated by Chrystia Freeland that it's not going to happen, but if it is going to happen, it will happen in the next couple of days. I don't actually know if it can happen over a weekend, but again, it's going to be this Thursday or Friday. And again, we're just going to have to wait and see how today and tomorrow play out. And for that reason, and pretty much that reason alone, but there's also other reasons, you should definitely subscribe to this channel, turn post notifications on so you can stay informed to the fullest extent. Drop a like if you haven't yet already, and I will see you all later on today. Bye for now.